I'm delighted to welcome Yasmin Vorajee to the You and Your Business studio. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, Alec. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, fantastic to have you as well. And we haven't spoken for quite some time. So we're going to catch up and remind our audience. And for those who want to go back to 2019, believe it or not, it's that long to hear the first interview. But as I always do, I take people from their last year in school. And I suppose I ask the question, were you the person who wanted to travel? Were you the academic? Were you the person who was wandering in no man's land? Tell me about that. Where were you in your mindset?
Well, I think I've always been that person who didn't know what she wanted to be when she grew up. And, you know, I had lots and lots of different ideas. At one stage, I wanted to be an optician and, you know, a doctor. And I don't know what it was that appealed to me about that. But I was definitely a nerd at school. I had to work hard and get the head down. Maths was always my nemesis, you know, so I was always, you know, there was always things that I had to do to help me to get the good marks. You know, my brother was quite the opposite. He just coasted and he'd get great marks, which was very annoying.
I hate those people, yeah.
I know. And he was my older, well, I'm the baby in the family, so he's my older brother. And so, you know, he kind of almost like set the bar. And if you didn't do that, then it was, you know, something wrong with you. So yeah, so I did. And, you know, I had lots of ideas, but being the baby of the family, and my parents are from India. And so they had very specific ideas around getting, you know, a good degree that will get you a good job and that you'll be secure. And my brother did law, my sister did accountancy, and I'm pretty sure they thought I was going to do medicine, but that was just not my forte at all. Right. And so I did psychology, sociology, and business studies for my A levels in sixth form college. And my dad was like, oh, these are quite airy-fairy topics, you know. But I really enjoyed them, and I especially loved psychology and sociology. And then I actually did a politics and sociology degree at the University of York. And again, my dad was like, these are quite airy-fairy. What kind of a job are you going to get with these? And in my head, like the rebel in me wanted to do something that I really wanted to do, not because it was going to get me to a particular outcome. And so all the time, I kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do. I always had this vision of being free in what I was doing. So I'd have flexibility, I'd have freedom. You know, when I eventually started my family, I wanted to know that whatever I was doing would nicely fit into that it wouldn't feel like a compromise or that it was one or the other. So I think they were the ideas in my head, but I didn't have a specific, you know, pathway that was going to get me there.
Right. So a bit of a rebel in you by the sound of things.
A bit. I think I was always a bit of a rebel. You know, when someone tells you what you can't do, and I was like, well, let me see about that. You know, so I think that's always followed me around.
Oh, that's it. A bit like myself, I suppose. What I always call myself, a rebel without a cause.
Yeah, it does feel like that sometimes.
When you reflect back. Okay, so what did you do then? Okay, university was on the cards for you to do something. So what was that?
Well, it's funny because at university, I actually got really heavily involved with the Students' Union. So I was women's rights officer, black rights officer. I ran for president in my final year. So I got really into student politics. And obviously I was doing a politics degree. So I've always been very politically minded, just in terms of, you know, the way the world works. So I completely went away from that and went and joined a financial services company when I graduated university, you know, as you do. Again, it's just that, you know, there was a Steve Jobs speech where he talks about how, you know, when you're looking forward, you can't join the dots, but when you look backwards, you can see exactly where all the dots were going. And I feel like that about my life, because I started working for this financial services company for a summer job. So I graduated on the Thursday, started working on the Monday. So there was no, you know, summer off or anything like that. I just started working. And then that was just a temp job, but I actually got made permanent 2 months later. But I hated it. Oh my God, it was horrible. Like, you know, me talking about freedom and flexibility. This was not freedom and flexibility. I was chained to a desk. You know, I was in the call center. You know, I had a headset. I was literally attached to the computer. You couldn't really go like more than a couple of meters away from your desk. And it was actually interesting because in that company, a position came up for training coordinator. And I'd always I'm really good at organizing. I'm really good at, you know, coordinating things. I love doing that. It kind of gets the geek out of me, you know, like when I'm spreadsheeting and all that kind of stuff. And I thought this would be really good. I'd really like to do that. But everyone around me in this company, you had to be in the company for like a year in a permanent role. And so they were like, you're not going to get it. You haven't been here long enough. You're not going to get it. So I got the job anyway. So I was delighted about that, because that really was my dream job. And then I did that for about 13 months. And then the Ireland office here in Carrick-on-Shannon opened up in 2001. And I made the decision to actually move over to experience life in another country for 3 years. That was the plan. And then I'd go home again. So let's say 21 years later, I'm still here. Best laid plans and all that. And this is what I mean about like connecting the dots backwards, because I came to Carrick 3 years after I'd moved here. I then met my Colin, who's now my husband, so there's no way, like, why else would I be in a small town in northwest of Ireland if it wasn't for work first? So so that's kind of, I was in corporate for 12 years altogether. So I joined the Carrick HR team. And again, I was kind of in training. I was doing a lot of HR stuff like payroll and things like that, and interviewing, recruitment. But I just knew that training and coaching and development was really my thing. I really enjoyed it. So I was doing my HR qualifications alongside working. So I'm a chartered member of the CIPD. And I just kind of worked my way up in the same company, and just was training coordinator, training team leader, training manager. And then my last role before redundancy was as VP of leadership development.
It's quite interesting, sort of, if we take that short journey already, the rebel in you don't find yourself cemented into some sort of large structural organization, but you did. But within it, you found a niche area that sort of gathered your interest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, there was always a part of me that was thinking, would there be other opportunities somewhere else? Would I have maybe scaled the career ladder quicker if I was, moving around from different companies? But, if you know Carrick, it's a small town of 4,000 people, and this employer was a huge employer at its height of it. So the opportunities weren't there. And like I said, I met Colm, and so it was a personal choice to kind of say, actually, what kind of lifestyle do I want to have? What kind of life do I want to have? And that really has always guided me in my decision making. That, for me, it's always been about like, what's important to me? What are my values? And for me, family and love are the most important. And the career is something that is really good to have. But I always, I want to live my life guided by my values.
And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is Yasmin Vorajee. And I think that's an important topic we were just talking about, values. People tend to often leave those behind as they pursue a career, possibly of quiet desperation in many cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, there were times where I really loved my work, and there were times where I really hated it, like I was bored, or if I didn't feel challenged enough. And I suppose, kind of going back to this idea of like, you're in a structure, and, the company that I had originally started with was bought out by a much bigger company. So you were, a much smaller cog in a really big machinery. And so, you do kind of get that sense of like, what is there for me? What am I going to do? Like, you just feel like as if you're kind of doing the day-to-day stuff and sometimes you look at your work and you think, why am I doing this? What value am I adding? And I think that's one of the things I love about my business now, is that everything that I'm doing has a purpose, and I'm excited about it, and it's going to help my client or my student. And so that means that not only am I, kind of obviously creating a business that sustains us as a family, but I'm also doing work that's really fulfilling, and that work that has a purpose.
I think it's quite interesting, because you took a particular challenge that particularly women have in terms of career choices. And what they're trying to do is make their family fit around their career, as opposed to what you made your career fit around your family, which was your ultimate priority.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, for a long time, I always had this sense that my kids will always know and remember that I was there. So that I wasn't always flitting around. Like, I come into the office and I've got a call, I've got to do this, that, and the other, but I'm here. So if they need me, I'm here. And I would hope that when they are, when they're older and they've left home, that they'll always know that we gave them a really solid, stable foundation of love and caring and being there. And for me, like, there's no greater legacy than what I leave with my children. So even if, when they're going to school in the morning, I'm there. I like to tell them, I was like, I think you're amazing. I think you're brilliant. If they're worried about a test, it's like, you know your stuff, you're good, and it's those little things that, whilst they might not remember it. I remember saying to my sister recently, I said, did I get lots of hugs from mom when we were little? She was like, she never stopped hugging you, but like, sometimes there's things that you just don't remember, but there'll be little things that my kids say back to me, and I'll be like, it's, it's dropping in. And so because family has always been so important to me, and it's something that my 5-year-old says to me, he says, when you and daddy got married, did you always want to have kids?
Good one. Children ask those questions, all right.
I know. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, why?
Yeah.
He's like, why would you do that?
Yeah, most common question children have, why?
Yeah.
But I think it's fascinating from your own perspective that now, having this priority, you had to find a new path to take yourself on. And I think also people tend to forget that you can be on that corporate ladder working God knows how many hours a day, but when you hit your 50s, you can't buy back that time with your children.
Yeah. And I think that's always been my thing is, will I regret this? Will there be a time where I think, God, I wish I'd, nobody says that they wish they'd worked more. That they'd wish that they'd been able to be there for the kids if there was plays or whatever that was going on for them. And so when I was made redundant and I started the business, and that it was a conscious decision at that time, because I knew I wouldn't be able to get an equivalent kind of a job because of my location. And at that stage, we were married. Our eldest was 15 months old. And I was the main earner in the family. So at that stage, I said, right, okay, I'm going to start my own business. And with that intention in mind around, I want that freedom, I want that flexibility, I don't want to be a commuter mom. And to be honest with you, Alec, I had no idea what I was doing. Like for the first couple of years in business, I was like just floundering, getting clients, but not really knowing what I was doing, and having no clue about, creating a really powerful marketing message, or, creating an offer that's going to be, really appealing, or how to market myself or how to sell myself. So this was kind of my very steep learning curve. And it was interesting because when I worked with a coach kind of early 2014, and my daughter would have been about 6-7 months old at the time, and she said, like, let's talk about what you're really good at. And I'm really good at getting things done in short spaces of time. Like, I can just be like a powerhouse. I can just like fly through things. And what was interesting was that's what I was helping my clients do at the time. Like, they were organizing their time better, they were managing their energy more effectively. It was like almost like structuring and transforming the way that their business was working so that they could get more done and get better results. And that's where Tiny Time Big Results came from. So not only was I helping my clients get these particular results, but what I was also finding in my own personal business was I only had like 3-4 hours a day, because my eldest was in creche. I had the baby at home, so she'd just sit in a little corner and just be playing with her toys and stuff. And I remember getting so frustrated because I was like, if only I had more time, if only I had more time. And I had to have a word with myself and say, well, you're never going to have more time, because our magic number for kids was 3. We wanted to have 3 kids. And so your time is always going to probably shrink. So how do you make it work? So as well as knowing, how to help my clients get really great results and manage their time and manage their energy and structure their business, I was also doing it for myself, because I was like, how am I going to make this work? If I've only got 3 hours a day, how am I going to make it work? And that's really where the methodology was kind of, I suppose, bubbling away, and I was creating it. And then it culminated in my book, which I published in 2018, because that really then helped me to consolidate the whole methodology of Tiny Time Big Results.
There's 2 things sort of come to mind. Fascinating, I must say, in terms of, number one, the business was created out of a need you discovered for yourself, but recognized that there were so many others in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I suppose the second thing is, which most people will struggle with, there is no manual if you want to start a business of what you need to do, and no route map in place for you.
Well, it's funny because the way that I look at it is like when I get clients coming, and I get clients from like different stages in their business. Some people would just be right at, you know, starting the point, and some people might be in it for 6 months or 6 years. And what I kind of established was there are just 4 key things that you need to look at in terms of having that profitable 20-hour week business. And this is kind of the way that I work with my clients. It's the methodology. I say, like, what's your marketing message? And if they don't have one, then we create one. We say, like, you know, what are you really good at? What are you going to be offering? So it's like having that compelling marketing message that as soon as you say it, someone says, oh, I know someone who'd be perfect for that, or that would be me, you know, I could be your ideal client. And then it's about, okay, well, what am I offering? And this, I think, is really important from a tiny time, big results perspective, because if you are only working a few hours a day, you can't be offering packages and services that are really time thirsty, that just suck up a lot of time, because you have to be really, really careful that, you know, you just don't have the time. And so that's something that I work heavily with, you know, to help them to structure the way that they work so that, you know, they can actually create the money that they want. So they're not losing income. They're actually, you know, like, so that's really important that, you know, somebody says like, well, if I'm working fewer hours, I'm going to make less money. That's not true. And so that's the message, that's the offer. Then it's like, okay, so what's your marketing strategy? And you know as well as I do that there are many, many marketing strategies. There's no one size fits all. And it's really about finding what works for you, what works for your style, what works for your personality. You know, if you don't want to be doing Instagram reels, you don't have to do Instagram reels. You know, if you're really good at speaking, you know, you might want to do more speaking engagements. If you're really good at getting clients just through having coffee, go and have more coffee. You know, so there's lots of different things that you can do. But one of the things that I'm quite passionate about is helping people to automate a lot of their marketing, so that, you know, if someone, say for example, you know, I was talking to someone about you and I said, oh, you know, you got to check out Alec. And, you know, one of the things that, well, this is the way I do it, is I go to your website. I would then, you know, like kind of have a look around and go, oh, is he got something for free that I can download? So I can download that. And then I teach how to actually build a relationship without actually me having to do anything. Like, once it's set up, it's 80% automated. So it's a brilliant way of being able to grow your audience, reach more people, but I'm not physically doing that, you know, every single day. It's not a manual process. And then the last is really converting around how do you convert those prospects into actual paying clients where the money exchanges hands.
And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is Yasmin Vorajee. I'm fascinated by this whole area of automation in terms of marketing, because people seem to tackle this maybe in the wrong way, and it's their lack of understanding. How did you gain the knowledge to be able to do a lot of this?
Do you know, I think I just threw myself into it. I kind of feel like, I mean, I've been doing my own business for 10 years, and there's a part of me that feels like I'm still an apprentice, you know, like I'm still learning. I never stop learning. I'm always doing courses and programs. I'm working with mentors. But I think early on, I was introduced to this idea of, you know, creating campaigns and, you know, and using automation. And I knew, you know, I have this kind of concept in my head always of like, you know, are you Oprah ready? So, you know, if say it could be Oprah, it could be whoever, you know, whoever you admire in your industry.
Right.
You think, you know, if suddenly you know, if Oprah just said, oh, do you know what? I just found this amazing site called Tiny Time Big Results. You got to go and check out yasminvorajee.com, and, you know, and everyone floods to my site. Like, would I be able to capitalize on that interest? Or would they all come and bounce off my website and go, oh, no, this is no good? And so if you land on my website, you'll see that you can get my book, you can listen to my podcast, you can download my 7-minute checklist. You know, so there's things that not everyone's going to want all of that, but I'll be able to capture a healthy portion of that audience. And actually that concept came to me when a few years ago, maybe a good few years ago now, I heard this guy talking about his business. And it was, you know, and he said he was doing these emails around, you know, self-worth and self-love and acceptance and stuff. And he was just doing these emails every day. And Kim Kardashian tweeted about him. And he said that was the moment where suddenly his website got hit by like 250,000 hits, where he would never have ever would have got that amount of traffic. And he said that was the moment where suddenly it just went crazy. And then he actually ended up on Oprah, you know, because he was like now thought to be this great thought leader. And I thought that is like, there's no way you can engineer that. There's no way you can kind of go, oh, this is what, you know, Kim Kardashian's going to tweet me. And so in my head, I'm always thinking like, you know, how can you be ready for that moment, you know, so that you can actually really capitalize on it. And automation will help you to do that.
And I mean, that's so important for you because, again, you've talked about that 4-hour window every day and how to get the best out of it. So there must be a fair bit of planning goes into that.
There is, in terms of the way that I structure my business and the way that I structure my offerings. But I'm also very conscious that, you know, I think people sometimes think that, you know, like I haven't got time. But if you've got a 5-minute window, there's actually a lot that you can do in that 5-minute window, rather than just saying, sod it, I'll just go and watch TV for 5 minutes or have a coffee. Like in my head, you know, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I could do an Instagram story right now. Maybe I could share a little snippet of my podcast. And the way that I've learned how to do these things means that in a few minutes, I can get that out. And that's now working for me. So one of the greatest compliments someone ever gave to me was, I see you everywhere.
Wow. Yeah.
And I went, but I'm not, you know, like I've got kids, I've got a dog, I've got, you know, a home and all the rest of it. I said, but a lot of the things that I can do, you know, if I'm waiting for the pasta to boil, I can just go and do that very, very quickly. It's not a huge burden on me. It's not like I'm feeling like I'm working, you know, 10, 12 hours every day.
Sure.
This is just me in tiny pockets of time, just saying, right, okay, can I do, and I'm just using the example of Instagram stories, but you know, I can just stand up and just say something, and now that's out there. Or I could, you know, send an email to somebody, you know, that I want to maybe interview or, you know, connect with, whatever it might be. But I think that there's things that we can do that I think we just sometimes overlook them because we think I haven't got the time. And I think that for me, it's not, what I find with time is that, you know, like this morning, today when we were recording this, like I was with the dog and I was like, I've got to be, you know, with Alec, and I've got to record this and everything like that. And in my head, I just went, I'll be there on time and it will all be done. And I literally sat down at the time. I went, it's all done. And so it's about how we use time and how we get ourselves into the flow of what we're doing so that it just feels effortless. It feels like as if it's coming through us and we're not pushing all the time.
Would it be fair to say, because there may be a misconception, that when you talk about giving 4 hours a day, it's not necessarily a solid block of 4 hours. It's 4 hours spread over the course of a day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on what you've got going on. You know, like my kids, when they're at school, that's like my solid time. But later in the day, I might have, you know, whilst I'm cooking dinner, or, you know, I've got a few, you know, 10 minutes or something. So, you know, but that's the freedom and the flexibility. What I find is I do most of my work in the morning because that's when my energy levels are high. I have a very specific routine. As my husband always tells me, I'm very easily institutionalized because, because I do my work and then I have to pick up my youngest at 1:30. But then between that 1:30 and like say 4:30, 5-ish, that's me having like recharging my batteries, doing the homework, having a snooze, because if I don't have a snooze, I'm going to be really cranky for the rest of the day, you know. And so it's about me minding myself and my energy levels, but also then kind of, you know, sometimes I have evening events. Network Ireland, the Roscommon branch's president for this year. So we have events and networking and things like that. So, you know, that can sometimes happen in the evenings.
Yeah, so I mean, really what you're talking about, and I've been a great believer in that, if you could get 4 hours of good work a day from an employee, that's all you really need, instead of this 7 or 8 hours, which is kind of a bit haphazard and maybe less focused.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember when I was in corporate, and if you had a half-day holiday, my God, you got so much done in that half day in the morning, you know, because you knew you were leaving at 1:00. And I would always be amazed, because then you didn't have any, you know, you didn't have any time with the fluff or the, you know, going and chatting with, you know, the water cooler or anything like that. You just really focused, you're really driven. Like the whole idea of the 40-hour week, that's from the Industrial Revolution. So that doesn't really apply now. I mean, that came in because it was replacing what was going on before, where people were working crazy hours, and this was a way of protecting workers' rights. But now we've moved on from that. We're not in the Industrial Revolution anymore, long away from it. So we need to think about, well, how do people work best? And there's a lot of research around people in their 40s and 50s and how we work according to kind of like our life stage, and that you actually are more productive if you're only working for a short space of time. Like it feels so vague and just so arbitrary to kind of say you need to sit here from, I used to work from 8 till 5, so you have to sit here from 8 till 5 and do this work. It just feels arbitrary. Like I'd rather look at and say, what are my outcomes? What are the projects that I need to be working on? What am I actually working towards, than just saying I'm working these hours.
I suppose in the minute we've left, believe it or not, it's gone that quickly. How can people contact you, and have you just a simple tip for people maybe to start their journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at yasminvorajee.com. If you search for Tiny Time Big Results, you'll find me. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I do have a checklist, a free checklist. If you want to download that, it's called the 7-minute check-in. And basically it's about setting your day up, the way that I set it up. So I'm giving you kind of key questions to answer about what you're going to do in that day. And I think that's really important. It's a mixture of strategy, tactics, and energy work as well. So download that checklist. It gives you an insight into how you can use Tiny Time Big Results in your business and your life as well.